Evelyn, a 14-year-old, recounts a troubling incident where she found herself in a bedroom with a boy she hardly knew. The boy locked the door and approached her, leaving her no escape. She then realized that she had left her cell phone downstairs and no one was aware of her location or the person she was with, plunging her into deep trouble. This was out of character for Evelyn, who is typically very sensible, but recent events had led her to make a regrettable choice. Evelyn lives with her parents and her older sister, Harper. Her life took an unusual turn when her mother began to behave oddly, initiating a serious conversation about responsibility one evening. She warned me about keeping my distance from boys, to which I responded that it was a non-issue. Boys weren't my cup of tea, and I hadn't been in any romantic entanglements. She acknowledged my words, yet insisted on a peculiar household edict: routine pregnancy screenings. Such an odd request took me aback. Initially, the idea struck me as so absurd that I couldn't help but chuckle. Pregnancy was out of the question for me, yet my mother's skepticism was evident. Arguing felt futile. Thus, to put her mind at ease, I acquiesced and conducted the pregnancy test in the solitude of the restroom. Unsurprisingly, the result confirmed my certainty: negative. Observing my mother's sigh of relief, I couldn't shake off a twinge of offense. My words should have been enough for her. Yet her behavior only grew more peculiar as time went on. I found myself subjected to weekly pregnancy tests, my social interactions under constant scrutiny, needing to provide evidence of my companions. It escalated to the point where visits to friends were forbidden if male relatives were present, with my mother preferring I isolate myself for study. The pregnancy tests became a relentless ritual, a daily demand. It was baffling. The mother I knew had transformed. Then, one day, I came home to find drug testing kits laid out. She decreed random drug screenings were next. Her trust in me had seemingly evaporated. It was utterly unbelievable. The mere thought of experimenting with drugs had never crossed my mind. Initially, I resisted my mother's insistence on drug tests, but she persisted, asserting that she was acting in my best interest. Eventually, I succumbed to the demands, but it left me feeling deeply despondent. My autonomy seemed to slip away. Subsequently, my mother's restrictions intensified. I was denied the opportunity to spend time with friends after school. Instead, my father picked me up and dropped me off daily, eroding my sense of independence. The isolation took a toll as I lost touch with friends, unable to participate in conversations about life beyond school. It was a disheartening cycle, and the worst part was my lack of understanding regarding the reasons behind this treatment. My evenings were a stark contrast to what they used to be, lonely and devoid of conversation. My parents had gone as far as confiscating my cell phone every night upon my return from school, justifying it as a distraction I could do without. They insisted that I should dedicate my evenings to homework. Then, a peculiar incident caught my attention. One day, upon arriving home earlier than usual, my mother instructed me to check if she had turned off the oven. It seemed inconsequential at first, but when she later questioned my early departure from school, it raised suspicions that they might be tailing me. To test my theory, I altered my route home the next day, and my suspicions were confirmed. My phone suddenly lit up with messages inquiring about my whereabouts. How were they tracking me? Desperate for answers, I consulted Lucas, a school acquaintance, who asked for my cell phone. After a brief examination, he revealed a concealed GPS tracking app. I was in complete shock, exclaiming, "Oh my God!" When Lucas revealed the hidden GPS tracking app, I implored him to delete it, but Lucas had other ideas. Instead, he began probing me with questions about my parents' behavior, and I found myself opening up to him. Lucas was different from the boys at school: smart, funny, and, if I dare admit, rather cute. As I shared the story of my overbearing parents, Lucas found it amusing and couldn't fathom how I tolerated them. He advised against deleting the app and suggested a clever trick: turning off my phone after leaving school, fooling my parents into thinking I was still on campus. His persuasive words encouraged me to seize some fun, regardless of my parents' restrictions. An hour later, Lucas texted me to meet him outside the school. The mystery intrigued me, and I eagerly complied. To my surprise, he proposed skipping school for the day. It was a radical idea. I had never done it before, but Lucas convinced me to embrace a bit of rebellion, reminding me of the advice he had given earlier. With my phone switched off, he took my hand, and together we fled the school. Holding his hand, I felt a mix of nerves and excitement, primarily because it signified my escape from the clutches of my overbearing parents, especially my eccentric mother. Honestly, my feelings about Lucas were a bit uncertain. He'd brought me to his house, where we had the place to ourselves as his parents were out. In a daring move, he impersonated my father and called the school to report me as sick, while I pretended to be his mother. This newfound sense of freedom was exhilarating. In his room, we played computer games, a strange feeling sitting side by side on his bed. I had never been alone with a boy like this, but Lucas's ease put me at ease as well. When our gaming session ended, he leaned in, and I experienced my first kiss, which was simply wonderful. However, he didn't want to stop. He wanted more. I suggested going downstairs to watch TV, but he insisted on staying in his room. He locked the door, and his advances intensified. I began to panic, realizing I was alone with a boy I hardly knew, with no one aware of our whereabouts. Desperation led me to reach for my cell phone in my pocket, hoping my parents would intervene. Then, something shocking happened. A knock and shouts at the front door. The voice outside was unmistakably my father's. He bellowed that he knew I was inside and demanded my immediate presence at the front door. Lucas hastily distanced himself from me, his expression filled with fear. With trembling hands, I located the key, unlocked the door, and rushed out of the room, bounding down the stairs. Grabbing my bag, I dashed out the front door and collided with my dad. At first, his face displayed anger, but as he noticed my distress, he enveloped me in a reassuring hug. We sat in his car and I recounted the entire ordeal. However, his anger resurfaced. He scolded me for skipping school, emphasizing that I had put myself in a perilous situation because no one knew my whereabouts. I retorted, placing the blame on him and Mom, arguing that their excessive control had driven me to sneak around for a taste of freedom. I insisted that I wasn't ready for a serious boyfriend, knowing I was too young for it. My father nodded, his expression reflecting sadness. Following the incident, my father disclosed a shocking revelation. He explained that my mother's overwhelming concern for my well-being had led them to install a secret app on my phone to track my location, enabling them to keep constant tabs on me. That night, I had a heart-to-heart conversation with both of them. I confessed that I had discovered the secret app, clarifying that my recent behavior had been a result of feeling suffocated. I apologized for my actions and expressed my desire to regain some semblance of a social life by reconnecting with friends after school. I argued that it was unfair for me to be deprived of a social life due to their worries. Additionally, I asserted that I would no longer submit to regular pregnancy tests. Unexpectedly, my mother burst into tears, leaving me perplexed as to what had triggered this reaction. My father comforted her and then dropped a bombshell. He revealed that some time ago, we had discovered that my sister Harper was pregnant. The news left me in disbelief. Harper was only 16 years old. My father continued, recounting how Harper's persistent illness led to suspicions, culminating in the discovery of a positive pregnancy test in the bathroom trash. It was a revelation that shed light on the underlying reasons for my parents' concerns. In retrospect, my mom's seemingly erratic behavior began to make sense when my parents shared their perspective. They confessed that their actions had been driven by a deep-seated fear that they weren't adequately protecting us, leading them to experiment with a new approach. Moved by their honesty, I reached out and hugged my mom tightly, assuring her that I had no intention of following in my sister's footsteps. I promised that when I reached an appropriate age and had a boyfriend, I would prioritize safe and responsible choices. After a prolonged silence, my mom offered a heartfelt apology for not trusting me more and vowed never to subject me to another pregnancy test. Have your parents ever done anything as unusual as subjecting you to daily pregnancy tests? Feel free to share the quirkiest things your parents have done in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to hear more stories like this.